This week, many football fans may miss church to attend their favorite game in person, but one NFL team has made it possible to do both before kickoff. We'll tell you who. The inflamed rhetoric behind the murder of a health insurance CEO and a civilian hero found not guilty of negligent homicide. Our panel weighs in. And President-elect Trump in his first major sit-down interview since the election. The panel on his plans to replace the current director of the FBI. These stories and much more, all this week on The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stigall. Now, let's meet our panel. Some of the men behind the stories at ReadLion.com. Josh Mann is our managing editor, Michael Ryan, executive editor, and Adam Wittenberg, deputy managing editor at The Lion. Gentlemen, welcome in as we dive into the news headlines this week. It was a beautiful reopening for those that have been to the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. I had the privilege of doing that before the tragic fire 5 years ago. It reopened, looked stunning, and all the dignitaries were there, Michael.
Yes, and it's particularly interesting that Notre Dame and President Trump have been through fire and have come out better on the other side. President Biden has sort of ceded the national or the international stage to Trump, and Trump is a guy who tends to take up all of the spotlight. He's changing global politics even before taking office. His talk of tariffs against Mexico and Canada unless they secure the borders is moving the needle. He's talked about peace in Ukraine and the Middle East, and even Iran seems to be in retreat. The media would like you to know that other world leaders don't like Trump very much. Maybe that's true because a strong American president makes them look weak. And Trump absolutely represents strength for America. He said that the hostages being held by Hamas have got to be returned by his inauguration, or there's going to be, quote, all hell to pay. Now, the media want to say that's bombastic, but it's only bombastic if you don't mean it. Is there anybody that really thinks he doesn't mean it? Certainly the world leaders know that he means business. What we're seeing now on the world stage is peace through strength and clarity.
Josh, I was struck at the imagery of the cathedral and all the dignitaries. That says to me you're sending a message globally that that's obviously still a very important landmark. I don't know, theologically, could you speak to the importance of that or what the symbolism there is?
Yeah, I think it does show that France is proud of its Christian history and its Catholic history. The nation still is mostly Catholic in terms of the loyalty or the religion that folks say they affiliate with. In fact, it's over 50% still affiliate with Catholicism, and the next closest is actually Islam at only 4%. So population by and large still feels itself as Christian and Catholic in its heritage. And I think it's a reminder that the so-called post-Christian West is maybe not as post-Christian, or maybe there's a little bit of a remembering and a reminder of what we have in our Christian heritage. So hopefully we have an embrace of that.
Adam, you have a story at ReadLion.com this week. Speaking of Donald Trump, we were just talking about him. A lot of people are very curious to know what he intends to do at the Department of Education. He has said that he'd like to just see it dismantled entirely, not just K through 12, but also higher education.
Yes, and the story focused on student loans, which the Biden administration tried repeatedly, even as recently as October, another attempt to forgive or eliminate massive amounts of student loan debt. Now, I talked to a policy expert who explained that it's actually not good policy to do this. Programs have already existed for a long time that help people who are truly struggling. If you just can't pay your loans, the government will cut you a break or reduce your payments. There's a lot of things that are already out there. But Biden was seeking widespread student loan forgiveness. And this expert pointed out that those who tend to have the most debt also tend to earn the most. It's people in high-paying professions who take on a lot of debt, and society benefits and they benefit, so they shouldn't get a free ride. And Trump will most likely, or almost assuredly, stop pushing legally to things that he's been challenged. He's been blocked in court, lost in the Supreme Court, sued by Republican-led states, and coming in January, President Trump will probably pull back from any legal protests seeking to enact these widespread forgiveness schemes.
It'll be interesting to see what's accomplished there, particularly without the help of Congress, and we will continue to follow it at readlion.com. Josh, we turn to you. Missouri's is this the state of Missouri's board overall talking about grades and changing the way grades work, or a particular school board?
No, it's the Missouri State Board of Education. They are considering a proposal that would lower the GPA requirement for teachers in arts and STEM fields. Essentially, if you're going to be a teacher, say in math, you're expected to, at the current time, to earn a 3.0 grade point average or higher in that subject area, because that's the subject you will be teaching. And so part of your certification requires you to earn a 3.0 or better in that core subject. They're considering a proposal that would lower that requirement to 2.5. And so essentially you could have a C+ average in your subject area of teaching and still be certified. Now, they're being criticized for mostly the look at a time when education's declining and academic standards are already seemingly being lowered. It's a bad look, but they argue that the research they've looked at suggests there's no great difference in teaching outcomes with just this 0.5 GPA adjustment. And the big problem they're trying to solve is teacher recruitment and retention. They think if they can lower these standards, they can get more teachers certified and in the public school classroom. I think the bigger story here is the decline of public education, that there is this recruitment and retention problem. And so we heard from experts who question whether it's a big deal, whether it will really make any difference, or whether there are bigger problems that the school board ought to be tackling.
Michael, grades don't matter. I mean, are we there? I know we've talked about teacher retention, and as Josh mentioned, it's getting harder to hire public school teachers. We've talked about reducing the requirements for them to teach, but what about the kids they're teaching and the outcomes there?
Yeah, it sounds pretty wild. I mean, the grades are now among the, quote, unnecessary barriers to the teaching profession. You know, one expert said that academic standards in colleges of education are already, quote, astonishingly low. And in Missouri, students are 30 to 45% proficient in math, and in reading in 7th grade, only 38%.
Adam, when we talk about the division between people who send their kids to public school and those who send their kids to a private Christian school or homeschool, this seems like this would drive a divide even further between those camps in terms of performance outcomes, ultimately. This sounds like public school kids are not well served compared to what many private or homeschool kids might receive.
Oh, definitely, and that's been true, and I'm really excited to see the media, including the Lion, routinely publishing, look at these dismal rates of proficiency, some of the things Michael was just quoting. I think for too long, people just accepted the public school monopoly, like, well, we just have to send our kids here, even though 20, 30, 35% of kids can read at grade level or do math at grade level. So it is good to see. I'll just share a quick anecdote. I used to live in Connecticut, a state with many private schools. And these schools would hire just college graduates. A friend of mine, he was a liberal arts major, and he just got hired to teach history at this, fairly elite private school in Connecticut. And they knew they could just take college graduates, from good schools, good backgrounds, and just give them some basic teacher training. He was not an education major. And, teach them how to teach class with motivated students and a good system. So, and they tended to produce good results. It was an outstanding private school. I do think there is a divide. I just want to raise one quick counterpoint. The story did mention in Missouri that once they raised the grade GPA requirement, they received less applications. And the other thing is, those who do really well in subjects like engineering or whatever, they want to go get high-powered jobs. And so I wonder if lowering the standard a little bit could at least increase recruitment, but then we need the accountability. If you're hired and you're not producing results, you got to go, or you got to get your house in order.
I should think that would be something all parents would want if they're sending their kids to public school. And it seems like maybe it's going the other direction, but we'll continue to cover that one too at readline.com. Adam, we stay with you. The Kansas City Chiefs continue what is a pretty remarkable season. Seems like they've got a lot of good luck surrounding them, some might say. I don't know. If you're a prayerful person, maybe prayers are working out there for the Chiefs, but there's a cool story about people of faith and the Kansas City Chiefs you've written about.
Yes, the Chiefs are a great organization. The Hunt family, Clark Hunt and his wife and daughter, are outspoken about their Christian faith. You can find them on social media. And we're actually working on a story right now about prayer, and some of the players are holding prayer meetings or praying before games. And there's a great culture in the team. What's really cool is they have the only on-site chapel service for fans of any NFL team.
I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting. What's that entail? Like, is there like there at the stadium?
Yeah, basically there's like a white tent-like building kind of attached to her right outside the stadium, so on the stadium grounds, and they have an actual like church or chapel service every Sunday when there's a noon home game.
I had no idea. Josh, this is another one of those things that I don't know how many NFL teams, if any, are doing it besides the Chiefs, but another cultural wink and nod at faith. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think just to think about the Hunt family, what they're doing with their Christian faith, and they're not forcing it on anybody, but they certainly, you can see that they're practicing what they preach. They want to make these things available to their fans. As Adam said, the way that they run the organization, and they respect players' freedoms, and yet definitely want to encourage a culture of prayer and Christian faith. And so it's been fun as a fan to see there's not this shame of Christian faith or this idea that, well, you need to keep quiet about it, but actually let's promote it, let's encourage it, let's facilitate it. And I think that's a healthy thing.
Michael, your thoughts on the cultural impact of an NFL team embracing faith like this so publicly?
Well, it's huge, and the Chiefs, being the winners they are, have a huge platform with this. You know, this kind of started pretty quietly with Tim Tebow Tebowing after plays, and he got criticized for it. There's no criticism really from the mainstream now, what's going on with the Chiefs. You know, they built this chapel 10 years ago. Since then, they've had 9 straight division titles. They've had 4 Super Bowl appearances. They've had 3 Super Bowl wins. I wonder if that's a coincidence.
That'll do it for the headlines section of the show here at readlion.com, where all those stories can be found. When we get back here on the Lion Week in Review, we take a look at some of the heated rhetoric surrounding the assassination of a health insurance CEO and the Daniel Penny case as the Lion Week in Review returns. Welcome back to the Lion Week in Review as we discuss some of the video in the news this week from some of the network news channels. And we'll start over there at Fox, where there was a discussion about the heated rhetoric surrounding the killing of the United Healthcare CEO. Now they've found the assassin. His name's Luigi Mangione. But interestingly, the tone around the killing seems to focus a lot on, dare I say, the CEO almost having it coming. And they discussed that on Fox. Take a listen.
Yeah, again, this seems premeditated in that way, but this feels like this person is a martyr, what they believe is a martyr for a cause, and the online chatter, to your point, Jerry, is not helping that case, making this guy even more of a martyr. I don't think it was a professional hit job, but I think it's somebody who thought he was doing something noble. And then when you have the online trolls backing that up, it just puts everybody in danger. The fact that there are some celebrating this, it reminds me of the assassination attempts on current President-elect Donald Trump. People celebrating it, making these people into martyrs. That's what's so sick and wrong. This is a father, this is a husband that lost their life. If you don't like healthcare policy, this is not the way to go about it, and shame on the people online for cheerleading it.
That's Tomi Lahren from Fox News, Josh Mann, who, breaks down a point that I think is, for most sane people, pretty rational. But I have read CBS News this week has written headlines about, this calling attention to the outrageous rates people are paying for health insurance, almost as if this CEO had it coming.
Yeah, I think we have to remember that this man was murdered, and whatever his job was, whatever things that he's alleged to have done, or whatever harms the insurance industry might be causing or perpetuating, the killing of someone is not justified, and murdering somebody is nothing to celebrate. And so I think America can put on its big boy pants and have a discussion about healthcare and a debate about healthcare policies. But I think we need to grieve the murder of a man who had a family, and also hold out that the justice system will prevail, that we'll see a fair trial, and that Luigi, if in fact he's done what he is alleged to have done, is put behind bars for a very long time. We can't celebrate his actions. We can't celebrate this kind of vigilante kind of taking justice into your own hands. It's not justified.
Michael, it's really kind of bizarre, not shocking, I suppose, politically these days, to see someone murder someone on video in cold blood, and the conversation within a week turn to the cost of health insurance being the reason. That's just bonkers to me.
Yeah, we need to keep our eye on the ball here. Supporting murder, premeditated murder on America's streets is crazy and frightening. Whatever you think of insurance companies, this was a death sentence without a crime, without charges, without a trial. And I can guarantee you that the left would never support that, even for the 9/11 terrorists.
Adam, do you believe ultimately that a conversation like this nationally could it lead to more? This is clearly an ideology that I fear, based on this man, as we understand, really smart guy, academic guy, top of his class. We don't know yet if he's on some sort of medication or what have you, but it sounds like he's driven by nothing more than a political ideology, and that leads you to start to worry, could this happen again if we, again, don't start toning down the rhetoric?
Yeah, absolutely. What I actually take from this is confirmation that the extreme left is violent. The extreme left is violent. We've seen it with Antifa, we've seen it with BLM, and then we saw people like Nancy Pelosi covering, and the mainstream media. Oh, mostly peaceful protests. Minneapolis was in flames, cars are being overturned, and this kind of a thing. And so here again, somebody commits a treacherous act of violence, just like Michael was saying. Even if the insurance company's not great, is it okay to shoot someone in cold blood? And we have lefties defending it.
We turn to Meet the Press on Sunday, a show that many people who are Trump supporters were not thrilled he made an appearance on, but it ended up doing exactly what many people thought it would, netted something like 5 million viewers for the show, Donald Trump's first sit-down since being president-elect with Kristen Welker. Lots was discussed, and she really pressed specifically on Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, and whether Trump intends to replace him. Take a listen to this.
Sir, are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed. I can't say I'm thrilled. I don't want to be Joe Biden and give you an answer and then do the exact opposite.
We're going to talk about
So
that,
I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is I certainly cannot be happy with him. You take a look at what's happened. And then when I was shot in the ear, he said, "Oh, maybe it was shrapnel." Where's the shrapnel coming from? Is it coming from heaven? I don't think so. So we need somebody to straighten. I have a lot of respect for the FBI, but the FBI's respect has gone way down over the last number of years.
Don't you have to fire him in order to make room for Kash Patel if he is in fact confirmed?
Well, I mean, it would sort of seem pretty obvious that if Kash gets in, he's going to be taking somebody's place, right? And somebody is the man that you're talking about.
And Michael, the question is sort of amusing to me because every president gets to select who he or maybe eventually she would like to place in an office. I don't know where it's written that an FBI director is entitled to serve a full 10 years.
Yeah, you have to wonder why the liberal media care a whit whether Christopher Wray has a job. What's it to them? They act like they have a personal stake in it, which is crazy. They also act like the DOJ and FBI have never been weaponized against conservatives. They've been weaponized against conservative parents, against conservative social media users, against conservative pro-lifers, against conservative Catholics, and religious universities.
Josh, is there any fair-minded person in the country that doesn't think, including President Biden, who said the Department of Justice was politically targeting his son Hunter when he issued the pardon? Is there anyone that thinks the FBI and the DOJ doesn't deserve a look under the hood?
I don't think so. And what I think the reporter or the interviewer was trying to do was paint Trump as vindictive. That's what she wanted in multiple questions. This was just one of many where she kind of assumes Trump's going to go after his political opponents who have gone after him. But what we saw in 2016 in his first term is actually he didn't do that. Although a lot of people who supported him would have loved him, for example, to go after Hillary Clinton. But they want to paint him as vindictive, and he didn't take the bait. And in fact, he gave reasonable answers time and time again. I was actually really impressed with that interview. And I see a Trump who really at this point, he's not campaigning. It's his second term. He just feels he looks free. He looks very transparent, honest, open. He's telling them like it is. And he has really nothing to lose. And he's very focused. And he really seems to want to get things done quickly.
Another heated story this week is the trial of Daniel Penny and a jury finding him not guilty. That led to the Black Lives Matter movement showing up outside the courtroom again, and here's some of that.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired.
You know, I was struck, Adam, that this group, this organization, Black Lives Matter, as we understand, that's who these folks are, or some offshoot of that group, haven't heard a lot of them in the last 4 years or so, and now they're back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was very troubling to watch and very sad, because I think most people with common sense can see that this was not racially motivated. A man with a history of violence, a history of crime and arrests, came on a subway, threatened to kill people. And a righteous Marine said, no, I'm not going to let you do this. I don't think he was trying to prevent a killing, not commit one. And so it is, of course, sad that this happened to Jordan Neely, but there was no ill intent here. And I think this is misplaced anger, misplaced offense and accusation. It also doesn't fit the narrative. New York City is one of the most diverse places on the planet. I've been there plenty of times, and most people are coexisting. I've ridden on the subway, and that's not what people walk on there and think. Like, oh, this person's this color, I'm going to do this to them. That's 99.9% not what's happening. It's not what happened in this case either.
Yeah, and noteworthy people of color told police that Daniel Penny did in fact do a heroic thing in saving many people's lives potentially on that train ride. Michael, again, the return of this kind of activist noise, we'd had a reprieve for several years. I can't help but wonder post-election, and by the way, I can't help but wonder if this verdict might have been different if the outcome of the recent election had been different.
Who knows? But yeah, the hatred and the race baiting you just saw in that video have abated in recent years. It's sad, like Adam says, to see that it hasn't gone away completely. And as Adam said, there's no evidence whatsoever that race played any part in this. In fact, blacks helped Penny restrain the gentleman. Blacks were grateful on the subway that they did it, and there were blacks on the unanimous jury that acquitted him. The subway tragedy, as sad as it is not what inflamed racial tensions in America. It's these people. It's what they're saying, and what they're saying is dangerous, irresponsible, and irrational, and the media need to stop giving them a platform for that.
And Josh, maybe it's Pollyanna of me, but I kind of think this last election might have, tempered the reception to something like this. Does this sound more out of place since this last election than ever before?
I think that's a good point. I think people have grown weary of this race baiting and the push for DEI and kind of this hyper focus on race. Versus what I think what a lot of Americans really want and believe in, what Martin Luther King certainly is remembered for, and that's that we become colorblind, that actually we don't consider the color of one another, and we stop looking or assuming that it is sort of this tail that's wagging the dog.
Gentlemen, thanks a lot. When we return on the Lion Week in Review, I'll ask the panel their favorite stories of the week when the Lion Week in Review returns. Welcome back to the Lion Week in Review. I'm Chris Stigall. Our panel, Michael, Josh, and Adam, discuss the stories of the week at readlion.com as well as their favorite stories of the week. And Adam, we start with you. Is there one in particular you'd have folks that are tuned in this week you'd like them to read?
Well, it's got to be the Chiefs and how they have the only on-site chapel in the NFL. They've had it for 10 years, and during that time, they've won 3 Super Bowls, appeared in 4, and it's just a lovely invitation for fans. Many teams have a chapel, a chapel service or a chaplain for the players, and they have that. But the owners said, we want to dedicate space and resource to allow our fans to worship on a Sunday morning if they choose, especially when there's a noon football game.
You see, you never stop learning. I didn't even know about this, and here I am sitting with these guys and hosting the show. I didn't even know. That's the kind of stuff you learn at readlion.com. Michael, your favorite story of the week?
Yeah, it'd have to be Adam's story on the pastors and education leaders gathering to talk about expanding Christian education. I happen to believe that Christian education will be the key to America's survival and revival. I love this book, Reclaiming the Future of Christian Education by Albert E. Green. He talks about how home, church, and school are where young children are formed. And today, if you're talking about a public school, a lot of people wonder if that's what they want forming their children. I think Christian education needs to fill that void.
Josh Mann, your favorite this week?
We've just published one on how Japan and China are both implementing new policies to promote childbearing and family. Now, it's really interesting, 2 very different Asian countries, but 2 of the most powerful. Japan, in Tokyo, they're moving to a 4-day work week for women. Hopefully, they think to encourage them to maybe work less, to have more time for family, to consider having more children. In China, they've just encouraged universities to have a love curriculum. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but they want to encourage their universities to encourage students to start families. Now, in my view, I think Christianity is actually a wonderful worldview that is pro-family. And maybe China could consider not outlawing unofficial churches. Certainly, I can imagine that in the underground church you have a number, millions of Christians who are eager to grow their families and help others do the same. And so I think it's something to keep our eye on. Certainly Elon Musk hopes we do, because he thinks that this is one of the greatest threats to civilization, these low fertility rates.
Fantastic stuff, guys. Great stories this week. Really interesting. This is the kind of stuff, the deep dive issues all across the map that you can read about at readlion.com. Hope you will. That'll do it for us this week. Keep up to date on every single news item as it breaks all day, every day at readlion.com. And for all of us here at The Lion, until next time, thanks for downloading the show.